What is an off-axis rotation? First, I'm going to explain what an on-axis rotation is, and that will help you better understand it. Upright, 360, 540, 720, any number where you're upright the whole time, that's on-axis because you're not going off of any axis. A front flip, a back flip, Lincoln loop, also known as a side flip, those are all on-axis rotations because you are on one axis going all the way around with your flip. The reason you are on axis is because you are on either the X or Y axis that you are flipping, meaning that you go straight upside down over the top and back round with your feet. Or in the front flip, you're going straight over the top and forwards. In the side flip, you're coming straight round this side and down the other side. There is no squintness to your rotation. You're not having your feet come off to the side in any way. It's going straight over the top. That is on axis. That means that if your feet come off to the side and they don't go fully upside down above your head, you are doing an off-axis rotation or flip. There are generally kind of four different axes that you can rotate upon. The three main ones are the Misty / Bio axis, Rodeo, and Cork. You can do them all forwards and backwards, but there are differences when you're going switch. First, I'm going to explain how it all works forwards, and then we'll get into switch. Imagine this guy is you, and you're doing a Misty. You're going to be throwing your rotation forwards, where your feet are going to come up behind you. They're going to go round, almost over the top of your head, but you can see they're going to be at a bit of an angle, and then as you come round, they're going to come back down in front of you to land. When I say in front, I mean downhill from you, and when I say behind, I mean uphill from you, and that goes for forwards and backwards, regular and switch. Here's an example of me doing a Misty 540, and here's an example of Bailey doing a Misty 720. As you can see, we're both throwing the rotation forwards, our feet come up behind us, rotate almost over the top of our heads, but not quite. They're a bit off to the side, and then they come down in front of us. Mine tend to be very flippy and close to just being a front flip 180, but it still is a Misty. Misty and Bio are two very close rotations. The Bio is essentially a less flippy version of a Misty. What I mean by that is where in the Misty, the most upside down point you get to being that fully upside down, here being very close to upside down, the Misty sort of level. A Bio, you'd be coming around about level, maybe a bit less. So you'd be setting it forwards, rotating to the side with your feet coming up from behind you, round to the side, and then down in front of you again. You're just not going that close to upside down. So the best way for me to explain the Rodeo is first to explain that the Misty, you should think of that as almost an off-axis front flip. By doing that, you can think of the Rodeo as an off-axis side flip. When you do a Rodeo, your feet are going to come up to the side of you, round the back, not fully upside down. This would be fully upside down. You're going to be around the back at an angle like this, and then they're going to come back down on the other side to land again. Here's an example of me doing a Rodeo 540. As you can see, my feet come up on the left, over the top, but not fully upside down, and down on the right to land. Next is the Flatspin, which can be very close and easily confused with the Rodeo. The difference between the Flatspin and the Rodeo is that the Flatspin is not really a side flip. It's sort of between a side flip and a back flip. So you're going to come up, your feet are going to come diagonally up in front of you. They're going to come over the top to the side, and then they're going to come diagonally down on the other side or behind. So sometimes in a flat spin, they come down straight behind you. Sometimes they come down more from the opposite side from which they went up. If your feet come up on the left in a flat spin, they're going to come down from the right on your landing. Here's an example of Connor doing a beautiful flat spin, spinning to the right. He's got these nailed. As you can see, his feet come up in front of him and to the right, and they come back down behind him and to the left. And next, the all-time favorite of most, the Cork axis. This one, if you think of the Misty as a front flip, you can think of the Cork as a back flip axis. Your feet are going to come up in front of you, they're going to come around over the side, and then they're going to come back down behind you. This is one of the biggest milestone tricks that you'll ever learn on skis, and it just feels amazing to do. Now, there can be a slight variation of this. The way I've explained it is a sort of true Cork 720, and when you're doing doubles and triples, that's the way you're going to want to do it. However, there is another sort of method where your feet, rather than coming up straight in front of you, they'll come up slightly to the side. So say you're spinning left, they'll come up slightly to the right, over in front of you and back down on the left. This can be a really stylish way to do a Cork 720, and it is a slightly different axis, but it looks really good and is very common in single flips rather than doubles. It also looks amazing with a blunt grab. Here's an example of a more true Cork 720 coming up in front and down behind. It's Bailey nailing one. And then here is an example of someone doing what we might call Mork or Cork 720 with a bit more style, coming up from the right side round and over and down the left rather than going from the front to the back. Now we get into the bit where it's a little bit more confusing. You might be thinking, if in a forwards cork your feet come up in front of you and round over the back, it would just be the same when you switch. They're going to come up in front of you, round over the back, except that's not your front. When you switch, your front is still what's downhill. If you can think of it that way, then it is the same. So if you're coming in switch backwards like this, and you do want to do a cork, your feet are going to come up on the downhill side of you. So that in front, you do a switch 180 and then the cork axis. For example, imagine the little owl is coming in switch and it's going to do a cork. It's going to spin the 180 and then go round into the same cork axis as before, with its feet coming up on the downhill end, over the side and down on the uphill end. The same goes for switch Misty. Your feet are going to come up on the uphill end, over, round the side, and down on the downhill end. So the axis is the same from the mountain's point of view, but from the skier it is flipped. Shouldn't be too hard to get your head around that, it does make sense. And here's an example of me, it's not a very good quality video, doing a switch Misty 9 in Austria. As you can see, my feet come up from the uphill end, over the top, and down on the downhill end. Switch bio is the same with switch Misty, just a bit less flippy. A confusing one is the switch Rodeo. In a switch Rodeo, it's the same axis pretty much as a switch cork. The difference being that your feet are going to come a bit more flippy and over the top in the switch Rodeo. Here's an example of me doing a switch Rodeo 720, where you can see my feet come pretty flippy over the top of my head, up from the downhill end, over the top and down on the uphill end. If I had done that with less of an invert, where my feet had come less high up above my head, that would have been a switch cork. Now that's all of the basic axes covered. I am going to throw in a bonus round with an axis that I've only seen a handful of people pull off. It's called an orbital. This is kind of a Flatspin-esque axis, but you're not going very upside down. And it's almost like your feet are orbiting around your body at the same level. If this was you, you'd be taking off, having your feet orbit around like this and then land. Doesn't seem like it would work, but here's a video of Henrik pulling out one of the best X Games runs of all time, whapping out some triple orbitals.